What do you think? Are you happy in here?
Guten Yardening, everybody! In today's video, I want to give you an update on the expansion we've made to our quail setup and show you the brooder that we created for a couple of our chicks that have hatched. And we want to talk to you about a couple of the challenges we're encountering as we're learning to raise quail.
Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we've given you any kind of update on our quail, and I wanted to take a little bit of time to do that right now because our setup has changed a little bit. We've grown our setup, I guess you could say, because we've been adding some more cages, some bigger cages, and I want to show you what that looks like. And we're first-time quail growers, so this is definitely a learning process for us, but I think we're getting some pretty valuable information from this early on anyway. And so let's go ahead and take a look at what our setup has evolved into and then some of the challenges that we're facing right now. Well, if I take a step back, you can see that we're now up to 4 cages, and actually every time I've gone to the thrift store recently, I've been on the lookout for more. And so I have 2 more of these kennel cages so that we can expand as we need to. Now within each of these cages, we have added just an area for them to take a nice sand bath. You can see it right in here. Each of them have their own little sand bath area. And when we saw them, the immediate reaction to having a sand bath was pretty good. They're spending a good bit of time in here. And we've gone ahead and we've added a watering container to each one of these cages as well. Now the reason we've done that in addition to these little waterers is it is really cold in here. Since the lights have come on this morning, it's warmed up a little bit, but it was about 18 degrees Fahrenheit in here when I came out to get these lights on early this morning. And so it's up to about 23 degrees Fahrenheit, but with temperatures that cold, the quail are just fine. Yep, see, they're just fine, but the water freezes quickly. So with these kinds of watering containers added here, just some upcycled, in this case, cottage cheese containers, the water stays thawed a little bit longer because there's more of it, and we can just easily change that in and out. Give them fresh water a couple times a day to make sure it doesn't freeze over. And we've been really pleased with the way these chia seed containers have worked in terms of their feeding. Now, of course, with our Winola Ranch setup here, they feed quite easily, and we only have to add, I would say, we only add feed to this once every 2 days maybe, or as the level gets a little bit lower. And while I'm feeding or adding feed to this daily here to these chia containers, and they have no problem accessing the food. So we're really pleased with that. But where we're having an issue comes in with the main difference, I think, between this kind of cage, this kind of setup that's made for the quail, and one that we've modified. And actually, I can show you a really good example of the issue right in here. You see there is some of their waste attached to the foot, and that's happening, I'll let you go, for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, they're walking around in it. You can see the difference with our Winola Ranch cage. There is wire mesh at the bottom, 1/2 inch by 1 inch mesh, and so the waste can drop through, so they're not walking around in it. So we have the issue with them walking around and getting it stuck to their feet, but then of course, because it's so cold in here, because everything freezes, well, that's why it gets stuck and it stays on their feet. And I don't think that makes for very content quail. So that's something we have to fix. And we do have some ideas for how to fix that problem. That's going to involve raising these cages up and changing the way the base works. But I've got to get to work on that, and that's going to be for another video as well, once I show you how we have fixed that problem. Again, have some ideas, but it's going to take a little bit of labor and some creativity, I think. But one of the other things we have to figure out, and it's not really a major problem here, but you can see, of course, they are going to be messy. Now that's, again, not a major problem. We expected them to have some of that. I mean, they're flopping around, they're flying around all day long. Well, there you go. That's a great example, especially when they're cold. They like to almost fly up to the ceiling, if you would, in these cages, to flap their wings to get a little bit warmer, it looks like to me. Well, that creates some mess here. And so finding an even better way to contain that mess is something that we want to work on here as well. And so you can see, well, I showed you already, but you can see right around the base of this Winola Ranch cage where the pan can't catch everything. It's just around the sides there. Well, we have something we can come in and just scrape it off. But again, if we could find a way to make that a little bit cleaner, that'd be ideal for us. And here you can see all the material that we're already collecting for compost. In one of the comments, I saw somebody refer to them as waste factories because they are using the bathroom all the time. But what a valuable byproduct for us. Now, one of the other challenges that we want to address here, and one that we had temporarily addressed, but we're going to fix and create a better setup, is we want to bring a heat lamp out here, which I think will create a nice warmer temperature during the day for them. It's been pretty cold here. I'd say in the daytime, today, for example, is going to be about 15 degrees Fahrenheit at its highest point. And at nighttime, we've had -3, -4 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, they've stayed about 16 or 18 degrees in here. Not a problem for these quail at all, but we'd like to keep it a little bit warmer for them. We want to keep them as comfortable as possible to make egg laying as frequent as possible. What do you think? Are you happy in here? We have a lot more eggs in our egg incubator, and we're not that far off from them beginning to hatch as well. But that's for a different video when we'll explain where those eggs came from. Now here you can see our simple brooder setup, and there are 2 of our hatchlings in here. I guess you can't really call them hatchlings at this point because they've been around for a couple of weeks. It's really amazing how quickly they grow. We actually tried to hatch the first 4 eggs that we ever harvested, and 3 of them did hatch. In fact, my daughter did a little short on those 3, and 1 of them did not survive very long after hatching. It had some sort of issue with it. It wouldn't enable it to stand up. It didn't feed well. It wasn't growing in the same way as these others. But you can see a really simple brooder setup here. All we did was to take a plastic container. This is just a 19-gallon plastic, inexpensive plastic storage container, and we made it see-through so we could keep an eye on them really easily instead of just seeing them from the top. And you can see 2 lights in here, and only one of them's on right now, but 2 lights in here. And with these 2 lights, we're getting enough warmth, really all the warmth we need in this enclosed space. Now, we attach those to a piece of PVC running along the top of our brooder setup here so we could hold them in place. And with those 2 lights on and a little bit of cardboard to control the temperature in here, you know, when it gets a little warm, we could raise this up kind of sideways to let a little bit more airflow. But with those 2 lights in here, we got it up to about 36 degrees Celsius, which is what we needed for them right after they hatch, in those couple of days after hatching. And so what we did was to now only have 1 light on to keep the temperature in here a little bit cooler, since they're, you know, a couple weeks out. They don't need as much heat, but they still got plenty of warmth in here under this 1 light. And what we're doing for feed in here, we're using a couple, you can see them here, just a couple of water bottles. So recycling those, upcycling those water bottles for feed. And then we have a chick waterer in here. Now, when they were really tiny, we didn't want to run the risk of them drowning, which is something that would have been pretty devastating to us. And so that's why you see some marbles here in the bottom. Now, they're big enough now that I don't think there'd be any issue, but we still have them in there. But that just makes it so that they can't stick their head too far down into the watering system. But there you go. Look at them, looking all curious. They don't have too much time left in this brooder, but it really is fascinating to see just how quickly they grow. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine at this point that they could have fit inside those quail eggs. They just grow so quickly. They're constantly feeding. This is a really inexpensive brooder setup for us. And once we get more eggs hatching in here, we'll see if we need to do anything to expand. But for right now, I think we're in pretty good shape. These little ones, I think, agree. Pretty soon, they'll be weaned off the heat and they can go out with our other quail. Well, we've got some work to do, but again, our numbers are expanding, and if we're lucky, here in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a whole bunch more hatchlings, but let's see how that goes. Wait for that content, because I think you are going to definitely enjoy what you see. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe. And most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.